Let's go! Part 3 of our UCLA film study on their really powerful offense under Chip Kelly. And today we are focusing on Dorian Thompson-Robinson's running ability. Yesterday we just did his passes, and obviously on day 1 we talked about the UCLA running game. And DTR's running ability actually ties both of those things together. And on this play, he actually makes the wrong decision to try and cut it outside. Number 20 made a Grant Delpit, Jamal Adams type of play in the open field. So once again, linebackers going on a run blitz, trying to clog the middle. DTR does the right thing to pull it, and he was able to get around this defensive end. So this is going to be Ali Gay, Andre Anthony. Last year, they were okay at keeping contained. Andre Anthony was a little bit better. But you see here, clearly the right decision was just to keep running this way. But instead, he gets lateral and, once again, a really good open field tackle. So sometimes your running ability is just a threat of you being able to run. You guys saw this in part 1 where we broke down where LSU struggled versus these types of runs. Backside defensive end has to keep contained because of DTR's ability to run, which widens this gap right here. And because of that, Charbonnet is able to run untouched. So that goes to show you that just the threat of running is huge. Alrighty, so this play right here is further proof that social media is starting to take over football, okay? I'll explain why in just a second. So DTR is back to throw here, and now we're going to see a scrambling ability. So let's bring it back here. So pre-snap, this running back takes this linebacker out with him. Then he is threatening to throw underneath. This linebacker runs this way, and DTR, once again, he's got a lot of guile to his game. He's a really clever player. He pump fakes that because now he knows the middle of the field is wide open on first down. Good job of that tackle finishing right there. And now he's got room to run. And I want to stop it right here, okay? This was probably the dumbest decision I think I've ever seen a quarterback make while running the football. Yeah, even worse than Miles Brennan versus Missouri not running out of bounds. This one takes the cake. And once again, it is further proof that social media can really get to the head of a college athlete. So before we show you the dramatic conclusion of the DTR run, let's take a look at how LSU did against mobile quarterbacks last season. So we get a zone read here. B.J. Ojulari does a good job squeezing down this gap. Bo Nix sees that and decides to keep it. Well, perfect enough, we had Jacoby Stevens here in the open field to tackle Bo Nix as the contained defender. And Jacoby Stevens was in a very similar position in the national championship game versus Trevor Lawrence. Wasn't able to make the play there. This one was a little worse because he was right there to make the play, but Bo Nix was still able to get the corner and score. So we had the contained defender there ready to go. We just didn't make the play. Then a little bit later in the game, Bo Nix back to pass here. So you're about to be maybe a little shocked with something that I'm about to show you, because we get a great pass rush here from Ali Gay, just destroys this right guard. But you'll see the end zone camera. We lost pass rush lane integrity. Bo Nix was able to sprint and go. Jacoby Stevens takes another questionable angle, and Bo Nix is able to pick up the first down. Now, before we show you this end zone camera angle, I want you to take a look at the list of the quarterbacks LSU faced last season. Now, in 10 games, LSU only faced 4 quarterbacks that were running threats whatsoever. We're talking, when you talk about modern football, we see more athletic quarterbacks. They don't look the same way that they used to look, right? These guys are super athletes like the Trevor Lawrences of the world and the Cam Newtons or whoever you want to mention. And last year, LSU just didn't face many of those guys. In fact, the mobile quarterbacks that they did face, I wouldn't necessarily consider any one of those guys to be elite runners. Now, before we show you the stats of those mobile quarterbacks versus LSU last season, those 4, I want you to take a look at the 2019 team, and you see in 12 of the games that they played, 8 were mobile quarterbacks that they faced. Okay, so you're looking at that list right now. So we get back to the modern day where LSU did pretty well against Kellen Mond and the Texas A&M offense overall, but in their other 3 games, Felipe Franks had his second highest rushing total on the season, where Bo Nix and Matt Corral, both of which returned this season, really lit LSU up on the ground. You see the EPA per play numbers are ridiculous from our guy at CFB Numbers. We appreciate his support. You see, just these numbers might sound confusing, but let me share with you that Lamar Jackson's EPA per play on runs that weren't design runs was actually really ridiculous. 0.85. Matt Corral's was 0.9 against LSU. Now, he did have the game-losing fumble at the end of the game, but still, he tore LSU up with his legs, and he's not even really that much of a dual-threat quarterback. Like, he's not a special runner whatsoever. So, yes, LSU does have a little bit of a shaky history against quarterbacks that are dual-threat, which then leads us to this chart, okay? So, 8 of 12 dual-threat quarterbacks in 2019, only 4 of 10 dual-threat quarterbacks in 2020, and then in 2021, versus Power 5 competition, 8 of the 9 quarterbacks that they will face are dual-threat quarterbacks. Leads us to this end zone camera, this Bo Nix run, and you can actually see what happens here. Now, LSU is in their traditional 4-man front, and the one thing about 4-man fronts like this is it's pretty easy for Bo Nix to see pre-snap who's coming and who's potentially not. Okay, so he knows that all 4 of these guys are going to come, and you see here, Ali Gay gets a pretty good rush off this edge, but what happens here is LSU's trying to run a little bit of a twist and a loop stunt right here. Joseph Evans gets caught up in it, and Jaquelin Roy just penetrates through it. I don't know whose job was who on this play, but we had 2 defensive tackles going through the same gap. Bo Nix was trying to hit this wheel route here, but all he does is step up, and you see we get 2 guys home, but because we lost our pass rush lane integrity right here, Bo Nix was able to just run it and take it. And this is actually very similar to DTR because the middle of the field was also open for Bo Nix to run. He decides to take it to the outside, and he picks up, obviously, an easy first down. So now we get back to the DTR play, and you see there, pass rush lane integrity is very important when you run a 4-man rush. So DTR back to throw here, and look, he's a really good runner. I don't know if he's like elite athlete, but he is very good with his legs. He was in the limited sample we saw last season, and this is what he decides to do. He decides to hurdle. This guy actually jumps with them, and he does fall forward for 4 extra yards after the hurdle. But if you're an LSU fan, you would hope he would try and do that against Bug Strong or whoever. And that was obviously not the right decision. Now, what does that have to do with social media? Well, Dorian Thompson-Robinson is a very big TikToker, and this was actually the clip of all clips that he shared on his TikTok page. Now, I don't know if he is bragging about this hurdle attempt or if he is saying that it hurt him with this emoji here, but watching it again, I'm not going to lie, it is, if he would have completed this, that would have had millions of views, and it still did. So I wonder if social media, knowing the DTR knows if he hurdles someone, that would be a viral clip. I wonder if he was doing that for the clout chasing, because he posted the clip anyway, because that's the only way you could really explain him trying to do that. And with the NIL and your viral worth, that stuff does matter now. But once again, I'm not DTR. Anyway, this is very interesting, right? Daronte Jones has, a tough task ahead of him. How does he stop dual-threat quarterbacks next season? Now, before I continue, I want to share some EPA numbers with you. Once again, EPA, a better per play efficiency metric, DTR's EPA on his runs against Hawaii were not that great, okay? In fact, he had a negative rush EPA. So what does that mean? Well, on his 3 carries, he wasn't really that effective of a runner. And if he cuts in the right direction, once again, 3 is such a small sample, but still, if he cuts in the right direction on the first play, he probably scores a touchdown, and that probably flips that EPA number. It's pretty crazy, right? So I think he's going to be a better runner moving forward. Let's just hope that's not against LSU. And obviously, that comes down to Daronte Jones' scheme. Now, one thing I find very interesting about the LSU defense, and we did a full video on this topic earlier in the year, was they were amongst the SEC's best in a lot of buzzworthy categories. They were top 3 in pass rush. They were top 3 in havoc percentage. They were top 3 in turnover percentage. They were really good at getting and generating rush. But what's that? Because they played a lot of pocket quarterbacks. Now, as a former pass rusher myself, it was different when I had to rush against guys that were actually dual threat quarterbacks, because you have to maintain your pass rush lane integrity. But if I knew I was going up against a quarterback that stayed in the pocket, it allows you to be a little bit more aggressive as far as your pass rushing moves are concerned. And we saw that really take its shape against Florida. That was a big reason why LSU won that game against Florida, was the few times that they actually did stop Kyle Trask, it was because of really good pass rush technique. The defensive line was able to be very aggressive, and it did help that LSU had a lead for a majority of that game. So, you know, that does go into this equation. Was the pass rush for LSU so good last year because they faced very little dual threat quarterbacks? It's a good question to answer. So that's the thing. It's not only last year, but the year before. You know, 3 of LSU's 4 worst games on a yards per play basis came against mobile quarterbacks, and all 4 of their worst performances came away from Tiger Stadium. So, yeah, there's a lot going up against this LSU defense. Let's just hope Ali Gay and Andre Anthony and Ojolari and those guys are up for the challenge. And, you know, we'll talk a little bit more about Daronte Jones tomorrow, because I actually like the way UCLA runs their 4-2-5 defense. We'll talk about Max Johnson's matchup with that. Obviously, you know, floating in your face right now, you could check out part 1 and part 2 of our UCLA film studies. It is Power Hour LSU. Boom! Let's go, Tigers. Let's go. I think we're doing pizza tonight. Let's